Okay, welcome students. In today's class, I'm going to talk about what is an Eulerian graph. What is an Eulerian graph? That's what today I am going to talk about. Okay, now look at the screen now. Now let me take this. What is an Eulerian graph? Now, what is an Eulerian graph? Now look at the screen now. There are four vertices I have plotted on the blackboard. I call it by V1, V2, V3 and V4. Now I am going to make an edge between each vertices here from V1 to V2, and then from V2 to V3, V3 to V4 and V4 to V1. The similar way I am going to make another picture whose vertices, again there are four vertices, and I make an edge, and before that I name the vertices as A, B, C and D. Now again I am going to make edges as follows: from A to B, and from B to D, and D to C, and C to A. Now there is a speciality in these two pictures or two graphs. We say actually it's not pictures, it is graph. So any graph is nothing but a group of vertices joined by edges is called a graph. So two graphs we have here, the first graph and the second graph. Now there exists a speciality in these two types of graphs. What is that speciality? Now I am going to make a cycle from V1 to V2, V2 to V3 and V2 V3 to V4 and again to V1. Now let us make the cycle now from V1 to V2, from V2 to V3 and from V3 to V4 and then from V4 to V1. Okay, again look at that, how I am making the cycle starting from V1 to V2, then V2 to V3, V3 to V4 and V4 to V1. This is a cycle. You note what type of cycle is this? What type of cycle is this? So in this cycle, each edge of the graph is each edge of the graph. This edge, this edge, this edge and this edge comes only one time. Have you noted that? So this is a cycle in which each edge comes only once. Am I correct? Now look at the other picture, this graph. Again I am going to make a cycle starting from A ending at A. I am going to have from A to B, then B to D, then D to C, at last from C to A. I'm going to make a cycle now from A to B, from B to D, from D to C and lastly from C to A. What do you see again? This is a cycle, okay, such that each edge comes only one time. Or other way I can say is that this cycle contains each edge only one time. Look at that, AB only one time comes, BD one time, DC one time and CA one time. So this is a cycle such that it contains each edge of this particular graph only one time. Let me try it. Now look at that again. Okay, now look at that. A to B one time, B to D, the edge comes only one time, D to C, edge comes only one time, and C to A, edge comes only one time. So you have to understand that in these two pictures there exists a cycle such that the cycle contains each edge only once. Am I right? I mean, the cycle passes through all the edges but only one time. Such a special type of graph, we call it as Eulerian graph. So the definition goes like this. In a graph, if there exists a cycle such that it passes through all the edges of the graph but once. Okay, now look at that. In a graph, if there exists a cycle such that that contains each edge only once, each edge but once, and such a type of graph we call it as Eulerian graph. Such a graph we call it as Eulerian graph. Thank you very much. Yeah, Shatish, really happy that today I'm going to talk about another topic. Okay, today. In the previous day we talked about what is Eulerian graph. It is a graph in which at least there exists one cycle such that contains each edge only one time. Such a graph is called Eulerian graph. Now let me take another definition, and that is what is Hamiltonian graph. What is Hamiltonian graph? That's what we are interested in. Now look at the screen. This is a graph, definitely, because it consists of vertices as well as edges, therefore definitely it is a graph. Now look at that. This is another graph because it consists of vertices as well as the edges. The vertices are joined by the edges. Now let me name the vertices A, B, C, D and E. So in the first picture there are 5 vertices and 6 edges are there. Now let us take the second picture. I call it the vertices by V1, V2 and V3. V1, V2 and V3. V1, V2 and V3. Let me give V2 and V3. So this is also a graph because consists of 3 vertices and 3 edges. Okay, now what is a speciality in these two pictures? Okay, in the previous case, let us take that. In the previous case, the speciality is that the cycle passes through all the edges but once. This is one edge, this is another edge, this is another edge, the fourth edge. So the cycle passes through only one edge, Similarly here, the cycle passes through each edge but once. Now look at this graph now. Now look at that. What do you see? Now I am going to make a cycle again from A to C, from C to E, from E to B, and then from B to D, and then again from D to A. Now what you see here is that when I draw this particular cycle starting from A to C, C to E, E to B, and B to D, and D to A, each vertex comes only one time. This vertex comes only one time, this vertex comes only one time, this vertex appears only one time, and this vertex crosses only one time, and this vertex appears only one time, and this also appears only one time. So all the vertices A, B, C, D, E, all these vertices appears only one time. I mean, there exists a cycle in which each vertex covered but only once. So this cycle covers each vertex but only one time. Okay, now look at again. First vertex A, second vertex C comes only one time. Now E vertex comes only one time, and B vertex is reached and it is only one time, and D appears only one time on the way, and A appears only one time. So this is a cycle in which all the vertex lies but only once. Okay, in the similar way this picture also. Now look at that. From V1 to V2, so V1 comes only one time, V2 the second vertex comes only one time, and V3 crossed, and that is only one time. Now next one, V1 comes only one time, and again it reaches where it starts. So it is a cycle starting from V1, then V2, then V3, and V1. So all these cycles, note the vertex, appearance of the vertex. Only one time in the cycle the vertex V1 comes, here V2 only one time, V3 one time. So this kind of graphs where there exists one cycle such that each vertex appears but once. The cycle crosses each vertex but once. Similarly, the cycle crosses each vertex but once. This is a speciality in these two graphs, and this type of graph we call it as Hamiltonian graph. So what is our understanding is that in a graph, if there exists a cycle such that each vertex appears once, then that graph is called Hamiltonian graph, and that suits for these two graphs. Okay, so I repeat again, a Hamiltonian graph is a graph where there exists a cycle which passes through all the vertices but only once. So the definition goes like that: in a graph, if there exists a cycle such that, now look at that, this is what we have here, the definition. What is a Hamiltonian graph? In a graph, if there exists a cycle such that the cycle passes through all the vertex but only once. There are two conditions. The first condition, the cycle should passes through all the vertex. First condition. Second, each vertex should lie only one times. The cycle should passes through all the vertex only one time, not more than one time. Such a graph, we call it as Hamiltonian graph. Thank you. The next class I will come with another topic.